Andre, you've said that much of your work is devoted to kind of unpicking the ways in which colonialism and imperialism and the forces aligned to that are still operating in the world today. I'm wondering, at which point did this become an important issue for you?
Okay, I was born and I was raised in Eastern Europe. I was actually born in St. Petersburg, which used to be Leningrad in the Soviet Union, in today's Russia, and I grew up in Prague, in Czech Republic. I left Eastern Europe for New York when I was very young. And to be honest with you, when I came to New York and after I enrolled in Columbia University, where I studied film, I realized I was fooled by Western propaganda. The world that I imagined was very different from what I later discovered in the United States and in the West. I began traveling very intensively. I worked for the international media, very big media outlets all over the world, especially in Latin America. So I realized very quickly, actually, that the problem was not the Eastern Europe. The problem was Western imperialism, and that we were fooled, actually.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, I think of people who go to the West, Western Europe or America, and are completely enthralled by it. I mean, they are even more deeply seduced by the experience of being in those countries. What was it for you that had the opposite effect? Why were you disenchanted with life in Western Europe or in America?
It was not so much about the life in America itself. I love Manhattan, I love New York, it's my city. I'm eternally grateful to it. It's a very cosmopolitan city, it made me an internationalist and all this. What horrified me, however, was the impact of Europe and the United States on the rest of the world. So I always want to emphasize this. It is not the life in Western Europe or in the United States that terrifies me. It's what they are doing to other people.
What about what is it about that they're doing outside? I mean, was it that you then explored the world and were starting to see, or were you reading reports of things? I mean, today we have a world in which we have this extremely charismatic American president. At the same time, he's authorizing drone attacks around the, in countries in America's backyard, as it were. How is it that you started to empathize with people in that part of the world who are experiencing the blunt edge of imperialism?
Well, in 1991, 1992, I worked for a very big media outlet in Peru. Actually, for Western media outlet, but I was based in Peru. Peru at the time was going through an absolutely horrific civil war, which was called the Dirty War, La Guerra Sucia. Entire Latin America then was totally different than what it is now. It was a colony. In countries like Nicaragua, Salvador, they were wiped out, basically. Chile was still recovering from some of the most horrible dictatorship, which was not unlike the one in Indonesia. So I was learning about the world, actually, about the colonies of the West from the experience of Latin America, which was still under so-called Monroe Doctrine. And Monroe Doctrine basically was claiming that the U.S. should have full control over the Western Hemisphere, no matter what people thought. So one government after another, for decades and centuries, were overthrown for our business interests. People were, what Chomsky calls, unpeople. They were treated like unpeople just because they had different color of the skin, just because they were not Westerners. And this is what I saw in Latin America, and much worse things I saw later in Africa, because Latin America was already ready for the revolution, which is taking place now. But continents like Africa, parts of Asia, it's just going on until now.
You have done quite a bit of work in Indonesia. You've produced a book on Indonesia after the fall of the Suharto dictatorship, and you've also made a documentary. What's your fascination
Yes, that's the one. It's published by Pluto in London, and yes, that's the one.
What is your fascination in Indonesia? Why Indonesia, of all the countries in Southeast Asia, for instance?
It's a very important country because what happened, it's not only it's the fourth largest, most populous country on earth, but also where the most terrible experiment after the Second World War took place. 1965, 1966, the coup d'etat, which deposed Sukarno and brought Suharto to power, was fully supported by the West, by the United States. It was absolute massacre, a genocide of 2 to 3 million people, no matter what they say, because official numbers are 800,000, but they killed between 2 and 3 million people. And the experiment, Indonesia is so important because this experiment, so-called experiment on people, was later utilized in so many other parts of the world, including Chile on 9/11, 1973, in Rwanda, or even in Russia, or even in South Africa.
This is not happy stuff. I mean, this is stuff that people perhaps don't want to deal with. I mean, what has been the reception to your work in Indonesia, for instance? Are people interested to go back to that period in the mid-60s, to the coup against Sukarno and the rise of General Suharto? Do they want to go back there?
Some do, some don't, but they have to. I mean, that's what we learn again in Latin America. I mean, unless you deal with the past, unless you put those responsible on trial, and unless you basically exercise your skeletons hidden in the closet, you cannot build a just society. And you can see Indonesia is a collapsed country. It's a totally failed state. Now, some people want to do it, but some people, of course, are afraid because so many people were implicit in it. Remember when they killed these 2 to 3 million inhabitants, Indonesia had only 100 million people, and if we say that each family in Indonesia, extended family, is like 200 people, then everybody has victims and victimizers inside. But there is no way to move the society forward without addressing this. Depressing, sad, yes, but in the same time it is very important and it is fascinating journey because they absolutely, I hate to say it, but they are not capable of producing books on that subject themselves because they were prevented from analyzing this from certain perspectives.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you very much.